This is Gath. Now you know Gath because of Goliath of Gath. This is where Goliath was from. This was his hometown. Goliath, when he went out to fight David at the Elah Valley, which is off in that direction, just about 5 miles away, not very far, this was his home area. The Philistines occupied the coast. They were a seagoing people, and they had the height of ancient weaponry technology. In fact, when Goliath is pictured, we often see him dressed like a Philistine. But truly, the way he's described in fighting David, he has these things called greaves on his legs. They're like armor for the lower part of his legs. And that was something that only the Greeks had. So he may have collected his armor or actually had it made by the Greeks of that era. So it put him at the top of the scale technologically when he went to take on David in this massive armor that he had on, and he looked probably like a Spartan, if nothing else. So he was from here. But there's more to this place than just Goliath, because this is where David came when he was fleeing from Saul, and he had killed Goliath. He had Goliath's sword, and he walks into this place, Gath, and King Achish is here, and David is taking refuge here. Of course, banking on the old Middle Eastern thought, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and therefore, since Saul's trying to kill me, an Israelite trying to kill another Israelite, I'll run over to the Philistine Achish, the king, and he'll let me hear. But when they found out it was really David, and I mean, they didn't have wanted posters put up on places, so what did he really look like? But what was the telling mark? He had Goliath's sword. And so he comes into Gath, and they recognize him, and they realize this guy is really dangerous. And so they threaten to kill him, and this is where David begins to drool and act like a madman, and finally they say, this guy is crazy. Let's get rid of him, throw him out. And of course, they didn't think of people that were crazy as being quite that off the wall with the Philistines. They thought they were more like seers, and they were important people. You can't kill them because they're not just mad, they're affected by the gods. But then other things happen here. Finally, David spares Saul's life a second time. The first time at En Gedi, and the second time, if you remember, Saul's entire army was asleep, and he and David and some of his men go up, and they steal Saul's water jug and his spear, and they shout across a ravine that, hey, I could have killed you. And Saul sounds so repentant, but David didn't trust him, and Saul was going to die shortly thereafter, but in battle. But in the meantime, David wasn't going to kill him. And that's when David comes back here to Gath and takes refuge with Achish. Actually, it was Achish's son by then, but it was another Achish, and he stays here in Gath with his men, all of David's men, right here in this place on this mound where there used to be a huge city that must have been at least 100 acres in size. It was huge. And then after this, while he was staying here, he pleaded with Achish and said, I would really like a place where me and my men could call home in your territory, Philistine territory. And down the hill in that direction, that there is the ruins of a place called Ziklag. And that's where Achish said you can have Ziklag, and that comes into play in an enormous way when David, later on, strangely enough, is begging to fight in a battle against Saul, when you and I both know, as well as David knows, that he couldn't really do that, but he had to ask anyway. And in the process, Ziklag gets attacked while David is about 100 miles from here. And very, very interesting things happen after that. But I'll have to explain that in another video, and I think you'll really like it. So here we are at Gath, the place of Goliath, the place of Achish, and the place where David and his men stayed for a really long time, the place where David feigned madness in front of the people. This is the place, a very, very significant thing, of course, in 1 Samuel. Here you are, here's Gath.